This is a video about treble bleed mod I'm going to put in this Strat right now. I did a lot of experimenting with a bunch of different resistors and capacitors, and this is the one I settled on. I think this is 0.0012 microfarads capacitor, 100 volt, and then this is a 270k resistor. That turned out to be the one that I thought sounded the best on this guitar. Let me hand over the camera and I'll just give you a sense of what it sounds like with and without this in there. So now this is going to do nothing right now because I have the volume on 10 and it's also not plugged in. So this is the guitar without the mod in it. At about 7, the volume's almost rolled all the way off. It is cleaned up, but it's also really quite dark. Now listen to the difference when I keep it here on 7. What happens when I attach these here? It's much brighter. Get an absolutely completely clean sound out of this fuzz pedal over here. Listen how clean that is. Or you can get it to be just on the verge of breakup. Or you can have it all out. Without it, again, without it, you can get it clean, but it's so dark that you don't, you can get it clean, but it's so dark that you don't even want to use it, so you just would never go there. Alright, so that's what the treble bleed mod is, and that's the one I'm going to put in, just to show you what the sounds were. I had this is a Band of Gypsies fuzz face. It's turned way up. The fuzz is way up into, actually it's a pretty high headroom amp, Carvin MTS 32. It's actually a, what do they call it? 32, it's not 3200, but 3200 just refers to the head. It's 3212, is it? I can't remember. Anyway, that's it. The mod's going in. And just to give you a sense of what I did to experiment, I actually got capacitors in 3 different sizes. Where's my paper? These are the 3 different sizes of capacitors I got. 0.001 microfarads, 0.022, 0.047, and these are the resistors I tried: 100, 150, 220, and 270. As you can see here, this is the, let me turn the volume off on the guitar. This is the Kinman version. This is the Kinman one. I found that if you use the Duncan one, the volume sweep was so messed up that, so to get from 10, if you listen to the amp just hissing, starts to, you can tell that it's getting quiet at about 8 or 7. That, using the Duncan mod, no matter which combination I tried, it was somewhere about 2.5 to 3 is where the volume started to really go down. So right now, with this fuzz face, I can go from full on out, 100% fuzz, to almost, well, what is it like? Basically a high headroom clean sound, not even that you're on the verge of breakup, at about 6, which gives me a very good usable range right here, whereas the other one, the usable range was about from 10 to 2.5 or 3, and even then, when you get down to here, it's muddy. So I didn't like the Duncan mod. I'm not saying it wouldn't work for someone else's guitar, but I tried every combination of these resistors and capacitors, and I settled on the Kinman version, and I'll put a link to show what the Kinman one is. And within the Kinman, I decided to go for 0.001 with the 270. I found that actually this right here chooses the frequency that is being allowed back in, that is being given a lifeboat so to speak, so that it can go back into your signal. This is the frequency, and this is how much of the effect you're going to get. In the Kinman version, that's what's going on. In the Duncan version, it's very similar, but it isn't so much what frequency and how much of that you're getting. It's which frequency and then how much you're completely messing up your volume sweep. So maybe I just didn't have a low enough resistor to make the Duncan version work, but this seemed to be the right frequency in the Kinman version. In the Duncan version, this one was the right version. In fact, it was these two right here that was the best that I could come up with in the Duncan version. The only thing I didn't like is that the volume sweep was affected too much. Incidentally, I think the one that Fender will sell you for about 45 bucks is something along the lines of this right here, and it is, as I understand it, a Duncan treble bleed. I also have a G&L ASAT Classic from 1993. It has a treble bleed circuit in there as well. And it comes that way from the factory, which I think is actually, that reflects well on G&L. The specs on that one are 0.0001, so it's 1/10 of one of these, and it's just a simple treble bleed. I attach these leads to the relevant parts on this volume pot. I think they say it's pins, is it 1 and 2 or is it 2 and 3? Anyway, the one that is not grounded, you definitely don't want it going through that one. And I ran these two things out here and I was able to try these. It actually would have been easier if I'd had some kind of breadboard and switching system, but you know what, I'm just not that sophisticated. I pulled the pickguard out in order to be able to attach it to that, but as you can see, I left these screws out. I put one screw here just very lightly to hold these cords in place while I worked on it. But as you can see, I did not put all the screws back in. From here and here across, well, I guess I just put one screw in on this side. So the pickups are essentially seated the same way as they otherwise would have been. It's just that I let this side flap up a little bit to allow these wires to come out. And that's how I recommend testing. And where I am, I actually live in Japan. These things cost $3 a piece. Now, I was planning on doing this to up to 3 guitars, so I ended up buying 3 of each of these and then 5 of each of these, just because I figured, you can't go wrong. I tried each one alone, each one in the Duncan version, and each one in the Kinman version, and I came up with that this one with this one was the best for my situation. If you're going to do a treble bleed, I was very surprised at the variation that you can get by doing these. Some combinations are more subtle, some are very dramatic, and so don't just go looking on the internet and finding whatever one that somebody liked for their guitar. I would recommend getting several of these. It's worth spending a little extra money, get several of them, and experiment, because that will really help you. Incidentally, these are Klein S-5 pickups. They're kind of like the Fender John Mayer Big Dippers that Fender only made so many of, and then are really hard to find, but I love these Klein S-5s. This is a Fender US Deluxe Strat, and yeah. All right, happy tinkering. Here's the circuit with nothing in it. Here it is with the Kinman mod. Without, with, and here's the best Duncan one I could come up with. You can see I'm still here at 7. I'm still here at 7, and yet it's so loud. Doesn't really roll off till 2.5 or 3. Now this is with the fuzz pedal on. If I turn the fuzz pedal off, it's going to work much better. But the Kinman is just far superior, at least in my case. ties are being preserved there. The other thing I was concerned about is how this would interact with my compressor pedal. So I have I mean, it's one thing to use it with a fuzz, but I have my Ego compressor over here. I love keeping this thing on all the time. This little board here is kind of more for like a telly for country, but anyway, this Ego compressor, I really like it. I was concerned that it might affect how it worked with that. So here is the Ego compressor with nothing in the circuit. You can see there's nothing in here. It can go quiet and loud. Still gets dark, but it can work. Now with the Duncan treble bleed circuit, which is right here, with that Duncan, the problem I had was this. Because it doesn't lose enough volume quickly enough, all it does is go dark. So it's basically just a tone knob at that point. So I was really concerned, and I was actually ready to abandon the concept of a treble bleed altogether, but then I found this combination here in the Kinman that sounds like this with the compressor. It's kind of nice all through the whole range. Again, let's compare that to nothing. Much better with. Then with the drive pedal, I'm going to turn the compressor off and just use the drive pedal. This is a soul food. Let's do it without anything. Okay, let's try it with the Duncan. Didn't work very well. Let's try it with the Kinman. Retaining all that clarity. And that's why I decided to use one, and I decided to go with the Kinman circuit.